welcome to Comic-Con at home, especially this educational portion here. My name is Francis Kong. I've worked with Comic-Con many, many years in the past as one of the fans and also one of the professionals who comes and helps set up different types of panels. And today, I am totally honored and blessed to have two really, really cool guys here with me. Eric Basu and Nicholas Bonardi. I hope I'm saying those names correctly. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you guys so that, because they can do much better job than I can, of their background, and we're going to jump right into how gaming is actually transforming the whole educational landscape, especially from 2020 onward into our new normal. So let's start off with Eric. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody for just a minute?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Francis. Eric Basu, started off my first career as an officer in the SEAL teams. When I finished that, I formed the company that I have right now, Sentek Global, in 2001. So for about 19 years, we've been serving the Department of Defense and commercial companies with cybersecurity services. We came up with the idea, I think probably about 5 years ago, to develop a training, online cloud-based training tool to help people learn how to be hackers, how to learn cybersecurity skills, and but with the idea of doing that in a gamified environment. So it's not just an online computer-based training tool; it's actually a video game that they can progress in and enjoy, and it's something they want to spend time on. And at the same time, they're learning skills that can earn them a certification that can get them a job.
Awesome! Thank you so much, Eric.
Welcome.
Nick, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Nicholas Bonardi. I'm the audio director at Ubisoft San Francisco, and I'm on this panel because I was one of the creators and the people that worked on the original Rocksmith, which eventually became Rocksmith 2014, the second edition of Rocksmith. Quick introduction, it's a game that teaches you how to play guitar. We can get into more detail about it later, but yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. All right, I'm excited to learn more about both these products here then. Okay, so since we're going to talk about basically good game-based education, I want to open up with the most obvious question first. Is let's go back with you, Eric. What is your opinion of what makes a good game in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's funny. I think there's some real basics to it. One is stickiness, right? So I go and I dabble with a new game, and it's kind of fun. But if I gotta have something that makes me want to come back to it, something whether it's a progression that I had, or I just really enjoyed the experience, or there was something a cliffhanger that I wanted to learn what happened in the next scene. I think it needs to be something new. If you go and play the exact same game every time, it's kind of like watching, I don't know, whichever episode of Star Wars that was the exact same as the the first released Star Wars, and I was like, I've seen this movie before.
I mean, episode 9.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. A Death Star. I remember I've heard of a Death Star before. I know I've seen this before. But but with some type of familiarity, right? So it might be the same, the same world setting or a similar world setting to something you're looking at. The type of game, first-person shooter, real-time strategy, or the interface, something that's familiar. I think if something's just completely out there, and I can't even think of an example of a game I've done that where you just kind of look at this and go, I don't even know what I'm looking at here, and I think I moved this. I think that has appeal for some people. Like, look at Spore. Spore was an example that really was like nothing. You guys remember Spore?
I know the game. I don't ever played it.
Yeah, it was pretty far out there, and it reminded me of it was a mathematical game back in the 70s called the Game of Life, where you had a number of dots, and the dots, you would create something in there, and if something was crowded by 3 or more dots, that dot would die, or it didn't have any dots connecting it, that would die, and things would actually morph and move there. But it was so far out there that I thought, this is really like nothing I've played before. On the other hand, that was something that I really enjoyed. I probably spent an unnecessary amount of hours just sitting with that pointless game that never advanced anywhere. So, and then I'd say probably the final thing is the ability to measure your increase in skill, right? I mean, I think if you really want to be with a game, you've got to have some kind of idea of, I'm feeling better at this, whether I'm online and I'm sitting here and suddenly I can come in the top 3 of the people that I'm on in a first-person shooter. I'm in a role-playing game and I've hit level 5, and I've got all kinds of cool gear. You've got to measure your progress in some way. It's part of the human condition is we want to continue to move forward, and games are a reflection of that.
Yeah, I can agree with you more. Those are things that I think I definitely look for in a game too, either consciously or subconsciously, but definitely. Nick, what are your opinions on what makes, especially, coming in from
Mhm.
Ubisoft, what are like good things a good game has?
Yeah, a lot of different opinions on this. So for me, it's when it's not just a game, but when anything is like pretty much really more than the sum of its parts, right? Like you probably have all have had this experience cooking recently because it's a pandemic and we're all cooking for ourselves. But maybe you like this certain dish, you make it over and over and over. For some reason, sometimes you make it and it's absolutely perfect. It's like twice as good as it normally is, and then other times it's like meh, it's kind of whatever. There's just something about like I put just a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, a little bit more this time, a little bit less. Like there's something about it that gets to this magical space where it's more than the sum of its parts. Any good game that I've played, I've had this moment of like, wow, this isn't just a video game anymore, is it? Kind of like, wow, this is a story. Wow, this is this other thing. This is this other thing. And along those lines, something that like really stands out to me is when a game makes you, the player, ask no unanswerable questions. So let me like explain what I'm talking about. Breath of the Wild. Have you guys played that? The new Zelda Breath of the Wild? Okay, it's just the
Yeah.
most recent one.
Yeah.
You have, yeah. So in that game, it's an open world Zelda, right? Where you can do anything. And as you play, you're like very quickly wanting to screw with the system, So you're like, okay, you learn that apples are good, and like apples give you life. Okay, fantastic. Well, there's an apple in a tree. Can I pick the apple out of the tree? Yes, you can. Well, what if I cut down the tree? What now? Oh, the tree falls and the apple falls out, and I can grab it. Okay, cool. Well, what if I shoot the apple out of a tree with an arrow? What then? Well, you can go pick up the apple. Well, what if I use a flaming arrow? Now what? It's like you shoot the arrow out of the or the apple out of the tree with a flaming arrow, you end up with a baked apple, and you're like, oh my god, you can do anything in this game. But really, Breath of the Wild's very similar to like Red Dead, right? It's an open world game where you ride animals and have weapons. And yet in Breath of the Wild, I'm not asking questions like, why can't I skin my horse? Where's the fur trader? How do I unlock the legendary animal that I want to kill? Like, why can't I just get in a fight with this person? I'm not asking those questions because the world is so consistent and so well thought through, and the story is so all encompassing that the questions that it's making me ask are relative to the realities in the world. I love that stuff. It's really, really, the best games do that. They make it very, very immersive. And that's kind of what I feel makes it more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah,
That's what I think makes a good game.
I love it. Yeah, immersive storytelling, and consistency. I think that's very important. Okay, so then let's riffing off of that. If now that we have an idea of what makes a good game or the quality of the game, let's take that one step further. What makes a good game that can teach actual practical real world skill? How's that different? So let me go back to Eric here. How's that different than a typical good game?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one is it has to be a skill that people want to learn. For example, I don't think there's much of an audience for a game that will teach you how to build a ballpoint pen. I could see maybe getting 4 minutes out of that, and then I'm kind of like, yeah, it's a pen. I'm pretty much done here. But I mean, if you're going to teach somebody how to study for the MCAT, like the card game, Francis, that you invented, a long time ago, or how to pilot a commercial airline, or learning how to hack into a computer skill, that's you're going to get a real audience for that, because there are a lot of people that want these skills. And I think the skills, if they translate into money for people, right, we tend to spend a lot of money on video games, but we have to earn our money in this life. And so things that can help us get jobs or improve our position, I think those are the skills that people want to learn. Second, I'd say you need to have direct correlation between the skill and measurable progress in that skill, kind of like I had said earlier. For example, teaching someone to hack, which is what we do. We could have a game here where people learn all kinds of skills on how to hack, but they really don't know how to measure themselves unless they go out there and they try and hack real systems. And then, then you're facing a whole variety of different things, and you may not be able to actually measure your skills. So what we do is for example, we take the certified ethical hacker skill, and as they progress in the game and they get a badge in the game to do a certain thing, that correlates directly to one particular point in the certified ethical hacker certification that they'll actually run into on the test. And so the two are directly correlated. So if you're a level 5, hacker in the game, then you're probably not going to be the same as prepared for the certified ethical hacker test as you would be if you were a level 10 or level 12. And then I think 3 is just making it fun. I mean, if it comes across like you're just doing a computer-based training class, it's not really going to appeal to the the people, the larger audience of gamers who want to learn a new skill.
Yeah. All right. No, those make sense. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, it's got to be a good game is fun. That's what games do. The game has to be fun. Bottom end of story, right? Otherwise, you won't play it whether it teaches you or not. And really, I don't think that real world skills are not fun. You mentioned making the ballpoint pen, but I've seen way stupider games, dude.
Like Goat Simulator.
Yeah, Goat Simulator. Goat Simulator. You don't do anything. You are simulating a goat. You win the moment you start playing. No, but really, I think fun is a matter of a matter of perception. It's a matter of what you bring to something, right? So I'm sure you both have the experience of hanging around with your favorite friends or people, and you're like, it's always really fun when I'm with them, and it's because these people make it fun. And we could be doing whatever, the stupidest thing, but for some reason it's fun. I rock climb quite a bit, and I boulder quite a bit, and you can boulder by yourself, but it's definitely pretty lonely. You boulder with other people, well, most of the time you're just sitting on the mat talking, because you do one route and you're I'm tired, you wait and you just talk to people, and then you do it again, but now it's infinitely more fun because you have people to do it, right? Bouldering is fun. That's not a great idea, but I am sure find the right person that assembling a ballpoint pen could still be fun, although challenging, and you could probably do something else, right? You wouldn't expect a game about paying your mortgage and being in debt and dealing with neighbors and having to populate your community with things that have been missing would be a very popular game, and yet Animal Crossing's super successful, where you're in debt to this raccoon the entire game, and you're just consumed by your capitalism of wanting to add stuff to your house, and he gives you the option. You don't have to keep building your house, and yet you do for some reason. Yeah, I'll add another story and go back in debt, even though I just paid off $1 million to put this other floor on the house. Farming super sucks. You have to wake up really early. It's really hard, and yet Stardew and other farming simulators are really popular. And again, I know it's really different, these game simulators from game real life, but my point is you can still get to a point where you're kind of making a game out of anything. I don't want to jump on the other question. This can very easily bleed into the next question, so I don't want to do that, but bottom line, the game has to be fun, and I think we can find fun out of way more things than we're finding it right now.
Absolutely. And you're totally right. A lot of it is the game itself, but also a lot of it is the immersion and maybe even the community you can create around it as well too, right?
Right.
That totally makes sense then. So then this leads into the next question then I have here. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, then how do you really entice and bring in beginners? People who have basically may or may not have interest in learning guitar, may or may not have an interest in learning about cybersecurity, but how do you create the perfect or the best system possible that actually entices them and engages them and brings them down that whole path? Let's go back with you, Eric.
Sure. I think first you've got to design it to fit the demographics. So, what's the age range you're looking for, the education level, the base level of skill in the area. We're trying to appeal to, people who probably might be interested in being a hacker, but when they get faced with a command prompt, they shut off because, kids nowadays weren't raised on command prompt, they were raised in a GUI. So you've got to make sure that you're bringing them in. If it's too complex or too basic, you're going to lose your key audience, and they won't stick around, and your game won't take off. I think second is to make sure there's real gamification, not just some fancy graphics and cutscenes. You've got to have intermittent feedback. You've got to have feedback that isn't consistent. Every single time I do this, I get it, and it isn't completely negative. It's got to every once in a while hit it, and that creates this psychological tie-in, kind of like a slot machine, or for lack of a better example. People need to be able to tie into a community. I think that ties back into what Nick was saying is, rock climbing by itself is fun, but climbing as a community type of event where I've got other people there and I'm interacting with them and feeding off of them. It's the same thing with video games, just like you said, Nick. They need to be able to, have measurable metrics against which they can measure their progress. Again, it comes back to, as humans, we want to be able to progress in what we're doing. Whether it's building a second story and going $1 million in debt to the raccoon, but hey, we got that second story. Raccoon be damned. And then, so like I was saying, in Haiku, we have game badges that denote progress towards completing a mission, but those same badges actually tie directly towards completing steps towards the certified ethical hacker certification, so that somebody can look at both of those things. And I think those are the key things that really bring in your beginners and let them, get their teeth in it, and then they want to stick around for a while.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nick,
You said something right off the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Francis.
No, go on.
You said something right off the bat that I would not have, I know intrinsically, but I was going to forget to bring up, which is they need to want to do it, right? If you don't want to be a hacker, that's it. Your game's not going to help. if you don't want to play guitar, like, sorry, it's not. I mean, outside of these two things, I don't think you can get good at anything if you're not having fun doing it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that sounds ridiculous, but I really do think that I think fun and learning are really like Stone Age style connected. Like, I think it's like basic functions. And I think in some way, even if it's like, I hate doing this thing, but I love it when it's done, right? Yoga is a great example of that. Nobody likes doing yoga, but they love it when it's done. It feels so great when it's over, but doing it, they're like, I just want to stop, and I'm actually going to complain the whole time in this class, even though I paid to be here. It's so weird. It doesn't make sense. On top of that, I would say that the biggest thing for someone who does want to do it, I would say getting over the hump of playing it at first, right? So like, I'm going to use my own experience from playing instruments, but a lot of people just stop playing instruments. They just put them down. They buy them. They have expensive instruments in the corner and they never touch them again. It's because you kind of need to be, and at least when I was growing up, you kind of didn't need to be a little bit more of a masochist if you wanted to learn an instrument, especially guitar. It's like, what is this thing? Well, it sounds awful when you touch it. When you put your fingers on it, it hurts. You're not going to be able to play anything that sounds remotely like a song for many months. People are going to put you somewhere where they can't hear you while this is happening. And then like 6 months later, you may be able to play through Hey Jude, but nobody really wants to listen to you until about like 2 or 3 years later. So it's like a really, really rough road. And it's surprising that we have as many guitar players as we do in this normal world. But really getting them over the hump, and the best way to do that is you kind of brought this up too, as far as showing progress and having the feedback, but giving them a way to participate for real. Something I did not do very well in high school and below, and I did great in college. And the difference that I noticed was that in college, my stuff was real. Like, oh, I'm writing this paper, that actually sort of matters. I'm working on this project actually matters. Like, I'm an adult now, I'm making real things. Where in high school and below, it's like, okay, great, I wrote this book report on the bridge over River Kauai. Who cares? No, this isn't going to make it in the New York Times. This didn't like impact the world in any way. It feels like you're just throwing it away. And even though you ended up developing a lot of the fundamental skills that you needed to be able to, read and write and do all of the other things and grow who you are, it's not really apparent in that moment. Whereas like, if you give someone a way where they can see that they are participating in a real way towards their goal, it doesn't feel like a throwaway exercise. And someone says, oh, I'm making progress towards the thing I care about. That's great. And yeah, you get people over that hump, and then once they're over the hump, they kind of propel themselves, which is nice.
I'm gonna ask a question a little bit off the list here, and I want to throw this at both, but I want to know, why is learning and fun so intricately connected to each other? Either one of you guys.
You want to start, Nick?
Sure.
Yeah. Why are they so intricately connected? I think like I'm just spitballing here, but it probably has something to do with like, I think back in hunter-gatherer times, most of the things that we had to learn were also fun to do, right? and now in our modern society where we're have a huge globalized infrastructure of things, like you can end up having a job where you are putting together a ballpoint pen and it's just not that fun. I think when you're having fun, you're motivated to continue to do it and you learn through repetition. And so I think that like, if you're having fun, I don't think I think they're most likely linked, but if you're having fun, you are guaranteed to learn much faster than if you were trying to learn and not having fun. I think whatever the brain chemicals are happening, it just burns it into your mind a little bit more. Like, I don't know if you ever had this with foreign language where you get over the point where you're like, cool, I can kind of put together sentences and I can kind of play around with stuff more than like asking where the bathroom is. Like I can kind of start, I'm over to that point where I'm starting to make my own sentences. And like you make sentences that are just like funny or stupid, you know, but like maybe they get to the point, and maybe you can start to have a conversation. Like that feels so good. And it's very fun. And like you start picking it up from there. It's kind of like wildfire. But you know, when you're in the classroom before that and you're not having that moment, it's a lot, the rote memorization like doesn't feel that great.
What about you, Eric? Like, you were in the Navy SEALs. Was there ever a time that you actually had fun and had going through all the training that you had to do?
Oh, it's interesting. You say that. So Bill McRaven, who was my commanding officer at SEAL Team 3 and became obviously Admiral McRaven, the guy who got bin Laden and Osama, actually said one time, he said, you know, people talk about how hard BUDS was. BUDS is basic SEAL training. He goes, you know, looking back on it though, he goes, I had nothing I had to be responsible for except completing all my physical evolutions every day. I get fed 4 times a day and I got 8 hours of sleep a night. It was like the least responsibility I've ever had in my entire life. And I got paid to do nothing but work out really hard every day. And I thought about that and I thought, you know, look, really life really is about perspective, right? I think there were only a few guys at BUDS that had fun because of the stress, right? Because you want to be a Navy SEAL. And, you know, for a lot of people, this was the only thing they had really ever, you know, for in life. And so there's a lot of pressure upon people. But I think what Nick said is right. I mean, you know, whether it's a correlation between when something's fun, you spend more time at it, and so you become better. You know, you hit those 10,000 hours, the tipping point that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, or whether or not. And I wish you knew some medical doctor who is, you know, really into gaming, because then I could ask him a question. Francis, if you know anybody with those qualifications.
Yeah, there might be someone on this panel that actually has that as well.
But I'm wondering if there's something in your brain that makes it. So from a layman's, you know, verbiage, opens up your synapses to be able to learn better when you're enjoying it. You know, for example, ballroom dancing. I really enjoy ballroom dancing. I've been doing it ever since my wife and I were, you know, doing it for our wedding. And I'll spend a good solid 4 hours a week in it. And I never sit there and go, God, this was, I could have spent this 4 hours doing something else. I just really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you why I enjoy it so much, but I would say I've learned far more and far different dances and far more advanced moves because I enjoy it than I ever would have otherwise.
Well, and a little bit more of a deviation question. Why do you think, if this is the case, and this is so hardwired in our DNA as cage people, that fun and learning are like such a fuel for it? Why did our educational system evolve to where it is today? And why does it stay this way still?
Yeah.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can. Well,
go ahead.
I can give it one word that will probably piss off a lot of people in the audience, or might not. Is the unions. You know, we've got a set of unions that have made the welfare of the teachers far more important by an order of magnitude than the welfare of the students. And so, you know, the LA Teachers Union, when they won't come back to work until the police are defunded, this has nothing to do with teaching the students anymore, but it's a great example of this is the priority they put on the students' learning. They aren't on strike because we don't have the ability to teach the students the way they need to do across all levels with internet. That's not why they're on strike. They're on strike because of themselves, because of, you know, this self-reflecting narcissism. And I think that it wasn't like this when the unions first started. I remember the teacher, I heard a story from Pete Wilson, who was the governor of California decades ago. And he said when he actually, he got the endorsement of the teachers unions because he had made a statement that he would not allow teachers to strike. And the head of the teachers union at that time said, we will endorse you because we don't think teachers should ever strike because it will take away from the learning of the children. And look at that attitude, 50 years ago to what it is now, which is we don't care if we ever come back to school because we keep getting paid. And so, whether the kids get educated or not. So I would say that in an environment like that, when you can't even get the teachers to pay attention to what, really is best for the kids, why would they care about what's fun or not? And I'm going to take that back because there are some great teachers out there who are in the unions because they're forced to or because they choose to, and they try to make things fun for their kids. But I would say as an overall infrastructure, if you were to look at how they train teachers, I would say that how do we make learning fun probably is not, something you're going to find highlighted in that curriculum.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think hundreds of years into the future, we'll probably look back at this time period and go like, oh, okay, well, that was a transition period. Yeah. Because it is just really hard. We have a lot of things that we need to teach individuals and not a lot of time to do it. And also the school has a lot of other things that it ends up being, right? It's a place where a lot of your social interactions happen, and those are very important. There's a lot of learnings that come from that. There's a lot of learnings about structure and hierarchy and being able to take responsibility for yourself and being able to be accountable for yourself and stuff like that. And we're trying to do all of those things at the same time. And teachers are trying to do all of that at the same time, while on top of just keeping a class of 30 to 40 kids cool. I have a couple of friends that are teachers right now, and they share ideas back and forth. They're like, okay, I had this class with all 8th graders and it kind of devolved, and how do you keep them back on the same page? How do you keep them talking about the thing we were talking about? Or it was Friday at 4:00 and they just all wanted to be home and they didn't want to be doing the thing anymore. I mean, a part of it is a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, although I am going to be really humble to say I've met with a lot of teachers. I've met with a lot of teaching institutions that I specifically went to conferences for the purpose of trying to get more games in classrooms and trying to get more education into games and have that transfer back and forth. And the stuff that they are looking for, teachers are looking for, and the criteria that they have to hit, it was eye-opening to me to see, oh, you do need a lot more. You have a lot more different criteria and things to hit. You need to be able to grade, you need to be able to see the results of things, you need to be able to do this to meet those scores, to meet that score. And so I do not envy teachers. I think it's definitely a strong task. But one of the things that we talked about, which is definitely hard, is participating and having something be real in that moment. There's nothing that you can tell a kid about a book report that's going to matter. They're going to know, they're going to know that whatever they wired right is not going to go anywhere, and I think that's just really hard. I definitely struggle with it. There are some things that are more immediate, obviously anything with art or drama or something like that. Any of the arts or even the music that you pick up in schools, you actually, the focus is participating right away, which is kind of cool. Even foreign language to a degree can become at least you have other students to talk to. But math is a great example of something that just it's really hard to understand that what you're doing is going to matter later. And I'm talking about when you're an intelligent person, you are a high schooler at this point, right? When I was in high school, I was doing what was it, advanced algebra? I think it was advanced algebra 2 or whatever. I'm sure that's all changed now. But there was a lot of what we were doing there was, pre-calculus. I don't remember what it was. A lot of what we were doing there was understanding, okay, here's this formula that does this thing. Here's this formula, and now here's how you do proofs, and here's how you do this. And it was so abstracted that there was no way for any of us to see how this was going to benefit us. And then, out of high school, I didn't pursue math anymore. And people told me afterwards, like, oh, you should have, because then you get into like advanced calculus and then you get to use all those things and it's super fun. And then like you get to have a lot of real world applications. I'm like, oh, well, great. It's very, very hard to see that stuff. I have a, if I can keep going, I have like a wonderful example of when you're talking about music too, when you're talking about, we were talking about the goals that different people have, like, let's say learning goals, right? So let's say someone starts playing your game and they say, I want to learn how to hack, or I want to learn how to play a song, right? Great, fantastic. So you only have so much control over that. That song might be very difficult. You can control what song they're given, right? It's like, okay, here's Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. It's 3 notes. I guarantee you could do this eventually. It's 3 notes, you know? But they might say, oh, but my goal is I want to play this other song. I want to play Silver Sun Pickups. And you're like, okay, well, that's way more than 3 notes. That's going to be pretty hard for you. So it's about kind of adapting so that they're always able to kind of participate in real time. But yeah, it's very easy for, this is kind of bleeding into your other question about like what didn't work well about other games, but like it's very easy to get off the path when you're like, okay, I'm trying to teach you this song, but chord theory is like really important, and like how you make the chord, and then like you can actually transpose that chord all the way up and down the neck, and like, you know, 2-5-1 and tempo, and like you're trying to give them all this like music theory, and they don't care about that. They just, their goal is, I want to know how to play the song. And so I think like with everything we try to do, what I hopefully try to do is try to get them to their goal, and along the way inspire them to make new goals for themselves that are just past that goal, that kind of fill out the learning that wasn't talked about. So, you know, like they'll finish a song, they'll learn how to play that song, and then afterwards be like, cool, this is an A chord, but weird, that's an A chord too? I don't understand. Now they have a new goal for understanding that, because you can't teach something, so you can't teach someone something that they don't want to learn. You know, you have to like give them a motivation to learn. So I think like you're slowly kind of introducing those elements, getting them more and more and more into the weeds, into the building blocks of what actually makes up the structure of the thing they're trying to get to, which I mean for hacking is got to be everything. Right? Like that's got to be the bare bones of absolutely everything that you're doing in your game.
And you're right. Like, let's lead into that question that you're alluding to. Now, this is a great example right now, because here in 2020, by condition, we are doing a lot of online learning. Not just kids anymore, but also a lot of adults have gone on to online entities like Udemy to learn new skills, and the prospect of, okay, well, my old job is not around anymore. It might not be around actually even by next year anymore. I need to learn a new skill I want to be able to live at all right now. And so online learning has been definitely taking on huge growth. So has online gaming, for obvious reasons. People have more time to spend in time online. But what are some of, and there's this whole huge vacuum being created right now. And also this new market is, I feel like, is emerging. But what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen in people trying to create a game that can teach and just doesn't do either well? Either one of you guys take this question. I'd love to hear.
Eric, I've already spoken to it a little bit. You should start.
Sure. You know, I appreciate that, Nick, and Francis. The, you know, for a lot of the hacker games I've seen, they go into a high level overview of the cycle of hacking, right? So they'll go through reconnaissance and infiltration and exfiltration, and they do all that. They have things in there that are similar to real world commands, but if you finish those, you would have no more ability to hack than you did when you started. You might be able to talk about what hackers do, and if somebody didn't know anything, they go, "Oh, so what do you do?" Well, you know, you reconnaissance here, and then you infill here, and then you do this, and you hop, and then you exfil. And they go, "Oh, you really know your stuff." Well, I mean, what do you use to infill? Well, I use the X button twice, A button 3 times, the left trigger. They'll be like, "I'm sorry, what a command does that turn to?" You know, so that's the main thing I've seen with hacking games. They, in order to make them compelling to people, they give them a general view as to how you go into hacking, and then they really oversimplify it to the point where you don't get anything out of it. You know, it reminds me kind of people, you know, kids that play Call of Duty and then go and they get a real gun and they think, oh, I know exactly how to use this gun. I played Call of Duty. I'm like, yeah, point it that way for one thing, and then two is it doesn't work the way the graphics show you to it works.
Are you telling me Ghost of Tsushima is not going to make me a samurai?
No, that one's
Because
legit.
I have a whole separate life set up after this pandemic at this point. I was, when you were saying that, I was literally thinking of, they have these like bamboo competitions where you have to cut, you have to time everything and like hit the buttons just right to cut through the layers of bamboo, and then you get more resolve, yeah, no, that's not going to make me a better samurai. Yeah. Yeah, I think I kind of already touched on that. I think like the big way that those programs kind of screw up. Speaking of, I definitely want to play your game at this point. It's making me want to be a hacker.
I'll put you on the list. Yeah, I'll get your information.
Okay, cool. I'll be on the beta list. But yeah, I think often they don't understand the goals of the player, right? So like, for example, something that we did with Rocksmith is we said, cool, learn a song. Like that was the first place for you to go. And then it brought you to the song list and you could go and choose anything. So that was a way of saying like, cool, you choose your goal. And then once the song starts, we're going to do our best to try to get you to play that goal by adapting. So we have adaptive difficulties. When you start playing, it just gives you one note. And then as it sees that you're getting the notes right, it starts populating more on the fly until eventually you're playing the whole thing. So that's kind of what we decided to do there. But we really wanted to focus on what the players' goals were. But yeah, it's so hard, and it's honestly hard for us too, because you get to things where it's like, oh, we want to teach this technique or this theory or this thing. Obviously, like every guitar player's got to know this, and if you want to start writing your own music, you need this theory and you need this understanding, and like they should read tablature, they should read music, they should, like they should read music notation, they should learn how to play along with a score. And it's like, guys, we can't actually force what these people care about. They told us what they cared about, and we need to be honest with them to get to their goal. And like, we need to show them other cool stuff along the way and be like mentors in this. Yeah, I mean, just download any like music theory app for the phone. Like the majority of them you'll grab will do something where you're like, whoa, I don't care. Why? Or, I mean, I care because I went to music school. I'm like, yeah, wow, that's great. But like nobody else cares. The second you start dropping like Locrian and Mixolydian and like the names of modes, people are like, I just want to know how to solo. I don't want the weird Greek words that are coming out of your mouth. So yeah, just really focusing on the things that they care about, because they're only going to get as good as their goals that they care about.
Right. That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Being more of I like what you said too, being more of a mentor than a teacher. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. So on that question, I want to ask this question then. In your guys' opinions, is it harder to make a fun game, or is it harder to make a good game that can teach? Are they the same level of difficulty, or is it just in the designer's mind, or is it really a different project altogether?
Yeah, I'll start. I think it's harder to do the game that teaches, because you can't give up the fun part, right? So you can have a fun game that really, it teaches you how to build a ballpoint pen, or, you get to experience being a virtual goat standing on a tree, or something like that.
Everyone's dream.
I mean, and at the end of it, nobody really cares whether or not they, really learned how to be a better goat, or, or something like that. They just had fun. With a learning game, it's got to be fun, for all the reasons Nick just addressed. But then you've also got to teach them. So you've got, you've got twice the amount of work, I think, for a learning game.
Yeah. What do you think, Nick?
Sorry, my screen just turned off and my lighting went to hell, so I'm trying to fix it. There we go, back to normal. Yeah, no, making a game that tries to have real world goals of giving you an education on the subject is obviously much more difficult. What's interesting is how it's more difficult, right? With in a lot of game dev, if you're just working on a game and it's supposed to be fun, often you will start working on one game. Not every studio, but like you can start working on one game and you're like, our game's going to be this. Then you start playing and you're like, damn it, that's not really fun. The thing that we thought was going to be fun isn't. But holy shit, cans, way fun. Let's make the game about shooting cans. And then as you go through development, you change and you're like, hey guys, we have this totally different game now. That's very fun to play. A great example of this is like, have you guys played the new Last of Us 2? No spoilers, but have you played it?
Not yet.
Okay, so in playing it, there's like an awkward amount of cars in this apocalypse that still have all their windows, and you go up and you just can smash windows, and there's nothing inside the cars. There was only one car out of like the 500 windows I smashed that had anything in it, but dude, it's so fun to just like the way she smashes the windows, and then you can have different weapons to smash the windows differently. It literally does nothing for the game, but it's the sound effect and like the camera action and everything was just so fun, and it just was in the spot that I swear to God, when they were making the game, they're like, yeah, no one cares that the windows should be blown out in the apocalypse. Let's just put them on every car. It's too fun. Put them on more cars. Let's have them walk through these overpasses. It'll be great. Yeah, so in game dev, you can do stuff like that. You can do stuff just for the actual fun of it, right? Like, but if you actually are making an educational product, you have goals that you can't control, right? They chose learn how to play a song. Well, darn it, I guess I'm gonna have to learn how to play you a song now, or I guess I'm gonna have to teach you how to play this song now. Like I have to get you to that point. That's now something that's immovable. You can give them an easier song, but sometimes they're still gonna want the harder song. So it's really there's things that you can't change, and definitely, especially with guitar too, the feeling of like being able to constantly participate, like I was talking about, while you're growing the track, but not have the part that you're playing get too dissimilar from it as you're growing it up to the full thing is not easy. We have the people who track all the songs are very, very talented musicians, and they're called the note trackers. And so they actually go through, tab the whole song out the top level and build all the levels down from there. And it's not an easy task. They have a whole review process. They go back and forth. There is a lot of different like discussions that they'll have over like, well, you should do it this way. I don't know, but you should do it that way first. If we have a little bit of time, I'll tell you about some interesting, speaking of learning things, some interesting kind of note tracker kind of philosophical arguments that people got into about how to teach them, and should we teach them this way or this way, and why, you know.
We are actually running toward the end of our session.
Sure. Okay. Well, then for another time.
Yes, we'll stay another time. But I want to have this moment to let you guys have a closing statement for about a minute or two. What do you think 2020 has basically set up the stage for the whole online environment of gaming and online learning? Like, what do you think this means in terms of this particular genre, this particular opportunity back and going forward?
I'll start. Well, first of all, I think we've got to have a game that's a combination of Groundhog Day and Jumanji, where you're trapped in 2020, and you've got murder hornets and zombie pandemics and, you know, a general dystopic breakdown of society to get to 2021. Is that's reality, right?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the murder hornets. I've been waiting, watching. I got nothing, you know. But I do think that working remotely, you know, is a big thing. I heard a statistic: 15% of people moved out of Manhattan, and a lot of them won't move back. You know, suburbs, you know, are just the houses are being, you know, bought, you know, rapidly, and companies, including, you know, a lot of our clients in our company that thought they could never work remotely, have now been working remotely, many of them seamlessly, for 9 months. And so companies are going to start looking at office space. I know that, you know, all the big tech companies are now looking at letting people work remotely permanently and adjusting their salaries accordingly. So I think that's it's gonna change the whole dynamic. I think for us in particular with the Haiku product, people are going to be very open to learning online, particularly for a job that they can do online, which is, you know, cybersecurity and hacking. So I think for us, it bodes well for us, the new normal.
Great, thank you. And your closing statement, Nick?
Yeah, ditto. I just speaking really quickly about the new normal. Yeah, it does. We are, all three of us are lucky enough to be in an industry that was not you know, really destroyed in the pandemic. I had a lot of friends that lost jobs. That's real tough, and they're just trying to get back to work. But for the few lucky people that that are able to still have their jobs, it is great. Yeah, I think we're discovering what we can do remote and what we can't, and like a lot of work can actually be done remote, you know. There was a meme that went around right when the pandemic happened that said, I guess now we're going to find out which one of those emails could have just been a meeting, you know, which is a little bit jerky, but the point is they were true. Right? I feel like work wise I talk to more people now than I ever have. I also feel like I have a lot more time to myself, and I have a lot more time to focus on the work that I have to do. It's and no commute, so it really is wonderful. I will say that the sides that are missing is the social element, for sure. I think we're still in this pandemic, everyone work from home. We're still in this like kind of dead zone. We're in this kind of remote work dead zone right now where it's like, cool, some things can be done really well, some things can't, and like the social element can't really be done super well. We're not at the point where we're like holographically beaming people into our homes and hugging them and everything's fantastic. You know, we still definitely in our own little houses kind of depressed and away from people. You know, it's definitely harder to, because the personal camaraderie that you have with people matters so much. And like, if you're not able to just have a beer with them or talk to them or have like a normal like in-person relationship with them, it gets kind of hard. But yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, 2020 is not over, and like this pandemic is definitely not over, and I'm interested to see the kind of social solutions that we come up with, because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but every month it seems like there's a new thing that kind of changes. Like nothing is, the way that we attack a problem is not quite the same. And like, I mean, the fashions change around the pandemic, the ways of communicating changes, the apps that we're using changes. Everybody was wearing bandanas. Now it's not cool to wear bandanas anymore. Now you're wearing this other thing. They're wearing this masks, and then there's fires, and now you're N95 masks. It's like there's a whole a whole rigmarole of how it's growing. And I'm interested to see by the time this is all done and we do look at, we are in a place where we could go back to the normal that we had, and we choose not to. I'm interested to see like where we're at that point, as I'm sure everyone else is. That's not really the most insightful thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's all the time we have. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining all of us here today. And thanks for giving some of the insights and the ideas, and obviously some of your visions and obviously your philosophies of game creation. So I'm gonna end it here. But thank you so much for like joining us.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here in Comic-Con.
Thanks so much, Francis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.